The crystal chandeliers of the Velfarian palace cast prismatic rainbows across the ballroom floor, their light catching on the elegant pale blue skin of the nobility as they glided through their ancient dances. Liam Harker tugged at his formal collar, feeling every bit the outsider he was meant to be. His human skin looked almost sickly pale against the ethereal beauty of the Velfarian court, and his simple black diplomatic uniform marked him as exactly what he was, a low-ranking translator, barely worthy of breathing the same air as these celestial beings. "Remember, Harker," Ambassador Reeves hissed in his ear, his weathered face stern with warning, "you're here to observe and translate if needed. Nothing more. Don't speak to the nobility, don't make eye contact with the royal family, and for God's sake, stay as far away from Princess Aviriel as possible. One wrong move and you'll destroy 20 years of careful diplomacy." Liam nodded stiffly, his eyes already scanning the crowd for the princess he'd been warned about. The Velfarian caste system was rigid and unforgiving, humans ranked barely above servants, while the royal bloodline was considered divine. He'd studied their culture for months, memorizing every protocol, every bow, every way to make himself invisible. That's when he saw her. Princess Aviriel stood near the throne dais, her pale blue skin seeming to glow with inner light. Her red curls cascaded like liquid fire down her shoulders, defying the elaborate braids favored by other noble ladies. She wore a gown of deep emerald that complemented her alien beauty, but it was her eyes that stopped Liam's breath, violet orbs that seemed to hold galaxies within them. She was speaking with a group of high-ranking nobles, her posture regal yet somehow approachable. Everything about her radiated grace and power, the kind of presence that commanded attention without demanding it. Liam found himself staring, mesmerized by the way she moved, the musical quality of her laugh as it drifted across the ballroom. As if sensing his gaze, Princess Aviriel turned. Their eyes met across the glittering expanse of the ballroom, and Liam felt something electric pass between them. Her violet gaze held his for a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity, and he saw something flicker in her expression, curiosity, perhaps, or recognition of something she hadn't expected to find. Then she began walking toward him. The ballroom seemed to hold its breath as Princess Aviriel approached, her emerald gown flowing like liquid silk with each graceful step. Liam's heart hammered against his ribs as conversations died around them, hundreds of violet and silver eyes turning to witness this unprecedented breach of protocol. Ambassador Reeves made a strangled sound beside him, but Liam couldn't look away from the princess's mesmerizing gaze. "Your Highness," Liam managed, executing the deep bow he'd practiced countless times, though his voice came out rougher than intended. Aviriel stopped directly in front of him, close enough that he could catch her scent, something like starflowers and ozone that made his head spin. Her pale blue skin seemed to shimmer in the crystal light, and when she smiled, it was like watching a sunrise. "You know the steps," she said, her voice carrying the musical quality of her language even when speaking his. She extended one elegant hand toward him, her fingers long and graceful. "Don't you?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Behind her, Liam could see Empress Valania rising from her throne, her face a mask of controlled fury. The entire court watched in stunned silence. Some nobles had stopped mid-dance, others whispered frantically behind jeweled fans. "Your Highness," Liam began, but she stepped closer, her violet eyes never leaving his. "One dance," she said softly, but her voice carried across the silent ballroom. "Unless you're afraid of what they might say." The dare in her voice sparked something rebellious in Liam's chest. He thought of all the warnings, all the protocols, all the reasons this was impossible. Then he looked into her eyes and saw something that made him forget everything else, a longing that mirrored his own, a desire to break free from the chains of expectation. "I'm not afraid," he said, and took her hand. The moment their skin touched, electricity seemed to arc between them. Her hand was warm and surprisingly strong, and when she led him onto the dance floor, Liam felt like he was floating. The orchestra, after a moment's hesitation, began to play a traditional Velfarian waltz. They moved together as if they'd been dancing their whole lives, her body fitting perfectly against his as they spun across the polished floor. She was taller than most human women, but still the perfect height for him to rest his hand on the small of her back, feeling the warmth of her skin through the silk of her gown. "Why?" he whispered as they turned, hyper-aware of the scandalized stares surrounding them. "Because," she said, her breath warm against his ear, "sometimes the heart chooses for us." The music ended, but neither Liam nor Aviriel moved immediately. They stood in the center of the dance floor, hands still clasped, lost in each other's eyes while the court buzzed with scandalized whispers around them. The spell broke when Empress Valenia's voice cut through the murmur like a blade. "Aviriel." The single word carried the weight of imperial authority and barely contained rage. "Come here. Now." The princess's jaw tightened, but she released Liam's hand and curtsied formally. "Thank you for the dance," she said, her voice carrying clearly across the ballroom. Then, lower, meant only for him, "Find me later." As she walked toward the throne, Liam found himself surrounded by horrified diplomatic staff. Ambassador Reeves grabbed his arm with surprising strength for such an elderly man. "What have you done?" he hissed. "Do you have any idea what you've just started?" Before Liam could answer, he was hustled from the ballroom, but not before he caught a glimpse of the Empress's fury and Aviriel's defiant stance before her mother's throne. The princess stood straight-backed and proud, her red curls catching the light like flames. Hours later, Liam sat in his Spartan quarters, staring at the wall and replaying every moment of their dance. The way she'd moved in his arms, the warmth of her skin, the challenge in her violet eyes, it all felt like a dream, but the diplomatic chaos swirling around him was very real. A soft knock interrupted his brooding. He opened the door to find not Ambassador Reeves, but a hooded figure in a dark cloak. His breath caught when she pushed back the hood, revealing Aviriel's familiar features. "Your Highness, you shouldn't be here," he said, glancing nervously down the corridor. "I go where I choose," she replied, stepping into his room and closing the door behind her. In the intimate space, she seemed even more radiant, her alien beauty taking his breath away. "Your mother looked ready to start a war," Liam said, trying to maintain some semblance of propriety even as his heart raced at her proximity. "My mother will have to accept that her daughter has a mind of her own," Aviriel said, moving closer. "As will the court. As will you." "What do you mean?" Instead of answering, she reached up and touched his face, her fingers tracing his jaw with infinite gentleness. "I mean that tonight changed everything. For both of us." The air between them crackled with tension. Liam knew he should step back, should remember the impossible gulf between their stations, but when she looked at him like that, as if he were the only person in the universe, all his rational thought crumbled. "This is dangerous," he whispered. "The best things usually are," she replied, and kissed him. Part 4, The Secret Romance. 3 weeks had passed since that first stolen kiss, and Liam had learned every secret passage in the ancient palace. Aviriel had shown him routes known only to the royal family, corridors that wound through the heart of the crystal spires where no guards patrolled. Tonight, like so many nights before, he made his way through the hidden paths to her private chambers. She was waiting for him by the vast window that overlooked the twin moons of Veltheria, her silhouette ethereal against the silver light. She wore a simple silk robe instead of her formal gowns, and her red curls fell loose around her shoulders. "I was beginning to think you'd come to your senses," she said without turning around, but he could hear the smile in her voice. "Never," he said, crossing the room to wrap his arms around her from behind. She leaned back against him, and he pressed his face into her hair, breathing in her intoxicating scent. "The council met again today," she said softly. "They're pressuring my mother to arrange my marriage to Lord Kelvin." Liam's arms tightened around her. Lord Kelvin was everything the court expected in a royal consort, pure Veltharian bloodline, vast wealth, and an ego to match. He was also cruel and possessive, traits that made Liam's blood boil. "What did you tell them?" "What I always tell them," she said, turning in his arms. "That I'll choose my own path." In the moonlight, her pale blue skin seemed to glow, and her violet eyes held depths that made him dizzy. When she reached up to touch his face, her fingers traced patterns that sent fire through his veins. "Aviriel," he whispered, and then words became unnecessary. She led him to her bed, and they came together with a passion that had been building for weeks. Every touch was electric, every kiss a rebellion against the forces trying to keep them apart. Her skin was silk and starlight under his hands, and when she whispered his name, it sounded like music. They made love with desperate tenderness, knowing that each stolen moment might be their last. In the intimate darkness, there were no castes, no species barriers, no impossible odds, just two souls who had found something precious and rare. Afterward, they lay entwined, her head on his chest as he traced lazy patterns on her bare shoulder. "What happens now?" he asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. "Now we face whatever comes," she said, her voice determined. Together. Neither of them saw the shadow that detached itself from the balcony outside, or Lord Kelthan's satisfied smile as he slipped away into the night. The summons came at dawn. Liam was dragged from his quarters by the Imperial Guard, still half-dressed, while across the palace, Aviriel faced her mother's wrath in the throne room. The Empress's fury was legendary, but her daughter stood unbowed before the crystal throne, her chin raised in defiance. "You have brought shame upon our house," Empress Valenia's voice echoed through the vast chamber. "Consorting with a human, a translator, like some common courtesan." "I have followed my heart," Aviriel replied, her voice steady despite the dozens of nobles watching from the gallery. "Something you seem to have forgotten how to do." The Empress's pale blue skin darkened with rage. "You will marry Lord Kelthan within the month, or I will have your human lover executed for treason." "Then you'll have to execute me as well," Aviriel said, and the court gasped. "Because I will not live in a world without him." Lord Kelthan stepped forward, his handsome features twisted with smug satisfaction. "Your Majesty, perhaps the princess needs time to consider the consequences of her infatuation." "There's nothing to consider," Aviriel said, turning to face the assembled court. "I stand here before you all and declare my love for Liam Harker. He is worth 1,000 of your precious bloodlines." The throne room erupted in chaos. Some nobles shouted in outrage, others whispered frantically among themselves. But through it all, Liam's voice rang clear as he was brought in by the guards. "She's right," he said, his voice carrying despite his restraints. "I may be human, I may be lowborn, but I love her with everything I am. And I'd rather die than see her forced into a loveless marriage." Aviriel's eyes met his across the room, and in them he saw everything he needed: love, courage, and absolute certainty. She walked toward him, past the shocked nobles, past her furious mother, past every convention that said they couldn't be together. "Then we face this together," she said, taking his bound hands in hers. "Whatever the cost." Empress Valenia rose from her throne, her face a mask of imperial rage. "Then you both choose exile. You are no longer my daughter, and you," she pointed at Liam, "are no longer welcome in our empire." "So be it," Aviriel said, and kissed him in front of the entire court. As they were led away, Liam heard something that gave him hope, murmurs of support from some of the younger nobles, whispers of "how romantic" and "true love." Their defiance had sparked something in the rigid Velfarian court, a crack in the foundation of their caste system. Standing together at the palace gates, facing an uncertain future, Liam and Aviriel knew they had lost everything, and gained something far more precious. They had each other, and they had proven that love could triumph over even the most impossible odds. The revolution had begun with a single dance, and now it would spread across the stars.